All right, welcome to our quick review of sectors of the economy, which technically falls under economic geography, but we're going to start talking about it in our unit on agriculture just because it's one of those concepts that we're going to revisit and come back to time and time again. And so part of what I want to do as we do this is draw your attention to the different ways in which things are done. Remember, just like there's different ways to do agriculture, there's also different ways to do all kinds of industrial activities. So for instance, our two pictures here are all about manufacturing gravel. In the top picture, what the person's doing is literally beating one rock with another in order to break the rocks up into much smaller pieces, right? Versus the gravel factory in Utah, where they send it all through machines and they let machines do all the hard work. So when we talk about the economy, there's really three major sections, and then with that third section there's a couple of subsections. So the primary section is agriculture, but it's not just agriculture, it's also anything to do with taking resources out of the earth or with directly exploiting the earth itself. Okay, in general, these are not things that make a super ton of money. Secondary, these are manufacturing industries. And manufacturing is really taking those primary economic outputs and turning them into the stuff that you and I know and love. So whether it's the Fruit Loops or the clothes that we wear, that's all manufacturing. Tertiary is a broad category that includes services. And within that, we break it down a little bit further and we talk about quaternary services, which is information services. Think things like teaching or research. And then also quinary, which is management services. So these are things like UPS managing a global supply chain, for example. Okay, so these are kind of our major sectors, and then what we're going to do is look at some graphs and look at how that changes across space. Generally speaking, by the way, that quinary, not always agreed upon by geographers. So sometimes you'll see it, sometimes you won't. It's good to know, though. So when we look at structural change in economies, and we're going to look at different stages of development, so our pre-industrial, which is to say our less developed economies, these ones again are ones where lots and lots of people are in agriculture. Okay, lots and lots of farmers, not so many people in manufacturing, and even fewer people in those service industries. Then we get into our industrial economies. These are our newly industrializing countries, and so we've got very few people in agriculture and lots of people in manufacturing, and more people in services, but still not a ton. And post-industrial, these are our more developed countries. And so they have very few people in agriculture, lots and lots of people in service industries, and some people, but not a ton in the middle, in that manufacturing. Okay, so just to see the way this looks visually, right? As you go through levels of development, you go from lots and lots of people being involved in primary economic activities to very few. Okay, secondary, you see almost kind of the opposite relationship, at least to begin with. There's very few, and then it goes up and it peaks during that industrial period. And then as industrialization occurs, we see the added use of machinery and labor becomes more and more expensive. So then we move away from using as many human beings in the labor and more machines. And so that's why that one goes back down. Our tertiary sector, on the other hand, is really pretty much kind of the direct opposite of primary. So not only does it go up as countries industrialize, but it continues to go up as they reach that post-industrial area. And remember, tertiary is services, and so services include everything from the clerk who checks out your groceries to the waitress who waits on your table, to anybody who provides any kind of a service. Our quaternary, we don't really see a lot of information workers until we get into that industrial period, and then it becomes increasingly important, especially post-industrial. So I'm going to steal this slide from the author, from Fellman, Geddes, and Geddes, from their Human Geography book, And they do go ahead and separate out quaternary and quinary. Most geographers don't really bother with this, but again, it's good to know. So what you'll notice, so primary activities, again, agriculture, anything extractive, anything involving gathering, okay? Basically, if it's got to do with the earth, it's a primary economic activity. Secondary, we're manufacturing, we're processing, construction, power production, things like that, where we're making something to sell. It's really in secondary is where you start to get into hardcore commercial activities. Tertiary, anything in retail or wholesale, personal or professional services, right? So personal services might be maids or things like that. Professional services might be when you hire, say, a landscape architect to design your backyard. That's a tertiary economic activity. Quaternary, information research, some basic management functions, right? So again, teaching falls into quaternary. A large chunk of what Google does would be quaternary economic activities. And then quinary, these are our executive decision makers, kind of the CEOs, as it were. And as you go up and more people are engaged in these type of economic activities, what you notice is that transportation and communication gets better, and we rely more and more heavily on it in order to not just engage in the economic activities, but also to supply our wants and our needs. So this has been our quick review of economic geography in the three, arguably 5 sectors of the economy: primary activities, secondary activities, tertiary activities, and quaternary or quinary. Last 2, again, debatable. Economists worry about it, geographers not as much. And it traces closely levels of development when we talk about numbers of people involved. So if you have any more questions about this, please feel free to come and ask. We're going to keep hitting this idea, so we're going to see it again when we talk about economic geography. We'll probably talk about it maybe a little bit with cities and the like. So it is one we're going to come back to a few different times.